Hi, I'm Rita. Welcome back to my YouTube channel, Life Worth Reading. Today, I'm going to be walking you through every single book I read in 2024 and whether or not I recommend it. I read 70 plus books in 2024. I read around 72, I think, including some DNFs because I read a big chunk of the book before I did DNF them. And there are only 4 books that I'm not going to be talking about because they're part of a certain fantasy series that we don't talk about on YouTube anymore. And obviously because there are so many books and because I am a resident yapper, I'm going to be trying to spend as little time as I can on any of these books because if I were to thoroughly talk about them and review them, we would be here forever. So without further ado, let's just get into it. I'm going to do it in chronological order from the start of the year to the end of the year. And so let's go. Lonely Castle in the Mirror by Mizuki Tsujimura. If you have anxiety, you really need to read this book. It's beautiful. The writing is amazing. The atmosphere was really cozy and it just really soothed me and I bawled my eyes out. Yellow Face by R.F. Kuang. If Twitter discourse was a book, but if it was well written, that's Yellow Face by R.F. Kuang. Ballad for Sophie by Philippe Mel and Juan Cavia. One of the most beautiful graphic novels I've ever had the pleasure of reading. The story was slightly predictable, but the illustrations all make up for it. This is a book you have to own. Open Water by Caleb Azuma Nelson. I was expecting to like this book more. The writing was good, the romance was interesting, but I just didn't connect with it the way that I thought that I would. I don't know what was missing, but something was missing, at least for me. Vera Wong's Unsolicited Advice for Murderers by Jessie Sutanto. I mean, read this book for the mystery, but stay for the food descriptions, for the found family elements, and for the very lovable, meddling young at heart, woman at the center of it. Young Mungo by Douglas Stewart, one of the most depressing books that I've ever read. I think I blacked out for like half of this book, but it was really beautiful. The writing was spectacular, but the content, oof, you have to read this during a good phase in your life. Black Cake by Sherman Wilkerson. This was interesting. I think it was very ambitious, but it ended up just being a little bit forgettable. I just didn't love this one, and I also was expecting to love it a little bit more, and I just didn't. Gingerbread by Ellen Oyoyemi. One of the most confusing books I've ever had to read. I liked it, but I didn't, and I'm not sure if I got it, but if I did, then I think that what the author had to say was interesting. But it was so undercover, it was so subtle that I'm not sure I even got it. Night Crawling by Lila Motley. Harrowing. I felt destroyed reading this book. It is so worth your time and it's very upsetting. This was clearly a dark time for books for me, but it is very beautiful and so worth your time. Rest and Be Thankful by Emma Glass. This book is a definition of exhaustion. This book is a definition of you don't have anything else to give, but you still need to give your all. It's short, it's also sad, and the ending made me want to close the book and just stare out a window for 15 minutes. It doesn't have the highest rating, but I personally really enjoyed it. Exit West by Mohsin Hamid. Beautiful. Also heartbreaking. I'm just looking back at the first quarter of 2024 and realizing I read a lot of sad books, but this one is beautiful. It's about war, it's about love, and it's about what a portal fantasy would look like in our current reality of war-torn countries and how you might deal with that if you had the opportunity to flee through one of those portals. Small Things Like These by Claire Keegan. I really enjoyed this novella. I thought the atmosphere was so intense, so cold, and it just reminded me of how traumatizing it was to watch a movie about the Magdalene laundries when I was younger. This is such a dark time in Ireland's history, and I'm so glad that such a beautiful author as is Claire Keegan could take the story and do something short but so meaningful with it. Tomb Sweeping by Alexander Shank. This collection of short stories is not very much worth your time. Unfortunately, I was hoping that I would enjoy it a lot more than I did. Only one or two of the stories really stuck with me and really made the collection worth it, because all of the others were just not very good. Emily Wilde's Encyclopedia of Fairies by Heather Fawcett. Apparently, I like fairies, or I can like them if they're Wendell. The romance got me, and I am unapologetically a fairy girly now, all because of this book. The Happening by Annie Ernaux. Another really devastating novella. This is actually based on something that happened to the author. It's about women's rights and the abortion theme. So it's very devastating, but very much worth your time if you can deal with that, because it is very graphic, it's very tragic, and it stayed with me for a long time after finishing it. A Monster Calls by Patrick Ness. Another sad book. What the hell was I doing in 2024? This was a book that I've been meaning to read for a long time, and I was definitely not disappointed reading it. It's sad, but I read the illustrated version. I think that really helped because it was so beautiful. The Vaster Wilds by Lauren Groff. If a historical fiction had Bear Grylls in it, that's what this book was. I was expecting a lot more out of it, but it was literally just an episode of Man vs. Wild, but with a girl and in, America. Briefly, A Delicious Life by Nell Stevens. Listen, you can't make me read this book because you say that there's a lesbian ghost, and then not give me a lot of the lesbian ghost. I thought this book was very disappointing. It was not memorable. It was not very good. It was just overall a disappointment, and I don't think I would recommend it, unfortunately. Everyone in My Family Has Killed Someone by Benjamin Stevenson. This book has two types of readers. Either you love it or you hate it. I, fortunately, am on the side of really enjoying it, but I did think that the sequel was much better, which I'll talk about after. But this book was fun, and I had a good time, and I think it's worth your time, but know that you will inevitably end up in these two categories. How to Sell a Haunted House by Greta Hendricks. The saddest, most boring horror book that I've ever had to read. I DNF'd it halfway through. Listen, life is horrible enough. I don't need to be thinking about my parents' sudden demise. Keep that to yourself, please. This was not a good horror book in my opinion. Honor by 3D Umagard. Also another devastating book. I learned a lot reading this book, but unfortunately those things were not good things to learn. The world is a savage place, but I think this story is worth your time if you feel like reading it. Project Hail Mary by Andy Weir. I really enjoyed this book. For someone who is not a sci-fi girly, I thought book was really, really great, mostly because it also had a mystery in it, which made me enjoy it a lot more, because I like a mystery in any type of setting, so a mystery set in space, I'm there. The Sentence by Louise Erdreich. Beautiful. I really enjoyed it. This fulfills all of your small town books or fantasies, but with a Native American main character and all that folklore that comes with it and all that culture, which I thought was a much, much more interesting setup. 7 Days in June by Tia Williams. The flashbacks to high school of this book were my biggest Wattpad nightmares. I DNF'd this book, but take this with a grain of salt. It just was not for me. Reputation by Lex Croucher. The Bachelorette set in Regency times, but somehow boring and not queer enough. This was just not a good time. I would definitely skip this one. Woodworm by Lila Martinez. This is the biggest good for her revenge story. Women have been wronged, and I support women's rights, but I also support women's wrongs. And when they have been wronged, they should get to do wrong things too. And they did. They certainly did. And I supported them. The Only One Left by Riley Sager. Somehow, Mr. Riley Sager kind of got me with this one because I really loved this book. I thought that the twists were chef's kiss, and it was one of my favorite books of 2024, which I definitely was not expecting. The Transition Baby by Tori Peters. This was the messiest book I read last year, but I thought it was really, really good. I felt things I didn't know I could feel, and I actually think that the writing was really great. I don't know why everyone complains about the writing. I really enjoyed it. It really struck a chord with me and I learned so much. Assassin's Apprentice by Robin Hobb. I mean, what else can be said about this book? Nothing that hasn't been said before. You need to read it. You're not a fancy girly, you need to read it. It's very accessible, it's very short, and you will just connect with the characters and it'll just make you want to read about them forever until the end of time. At least that's what happened to me. So I hope that it happens to you too. Harlem Shuffle by Colson Whitehead. I mean, this is giving Double Life, okay? This is giving Hannah Montana, but a crime novel set in the 60s in Harlem. Ray, our main character Ray, is leading a double life and it's not going well for him. Everyone on This Train is a Suspect by Benjamin Stevenson. Now, that's history, because if the first book was good, the second book was so good. I enjoyed it much more than the first one. I thought the characters, the setting, the mystery, chef's kiss, you have to read this book. Even if you didn't enjoy the first one, the sequel is so much better in my opinion. Let's talk about 3 books in a row. The Inheritance Games, The Haythorne Legacy, and The Final Gambit, all by Jennifer Lynn Barnes. I mean, talk about Wattpad days, right? If you also loved a little Wattpad story when you were younger, give this a try. I thought it was fun, but the second and third book kind of ruined it for me. The mystery was not very good, and you will just be at the end thinking, why did I just read these 3 books if that's what was going to happen? I thought it was such a disappointing finale, which made me sad because I kind of enjoyed the first one. And Every Morning the Way Home Gets Longer and Longer by Frederick Bachman. I think I didn't give this book the chance and time it deserved. It's a really short novella. It's very devastating, but it didn't impact me in a way that I thought that it would. And I'm not sure if it was me or the writing, because I just kind of forgot that I read this book. Emily Wild Map of the Other Lands by Heather Fawcett. Now, that's history. I mean, the tent scene, I'm still thinking about it. I'm still thinking about it. The Bullet That Missed by Richard Osman and The Last Devil to Die by Richard Osman. Books 3 and 4 in the Thursday Murder Club series. I really enjoy them. They're always 4-star reads for me. They're not the best thing I've ever read, but they're so much fun and they have such cute characters and I love the fan family element in it. Royal Assassin by Robin Hobb. I think that this is my favorite one of the trilogy. It was so good. The way that it made me feel, I still remember it to this day. It was such an impactful book for me and I loved the journey that it took me on. The Little Book of Huga. This is fine. I don't think that this is worth your time. I think this is cozy, it's cute. If it's in your library, read it, but don't buy it. It's really not anything special. The Glass Castle by Jeanette Walls. This was a reread for me, but it was still 5 stars. What a great and incredible memoir. Just so insane, the life that this woman led and what she did with it. It was absolutely insane. Milk Blood Heat by Daintiel W. Moniz. Unfortunately, this collection of short stories also didn't work for me. I thought most of the stories were just okay. There were 1 or 2 that I really didn't enjoy and then some that I did. I mean, I would say it might be worth a read, but I don't remember it very fondly, actually. The Prince and the Dressmaker by Jen Wang. Honestly, I kind of forgot that I read this book, but it was really cute when I did read it, and the illustrations were really cute as well. So, I mean, if you're into graphic novels, I think you should give it a try. Fina by Nino Cipri. I mean, who knew reading about ex-girlfriends in an IKEA-type place that has portals would be such a fun time and so emotional as well. I did not expect this book to hook me the way that it did, and the final part really got me emotional thinking about it, so I had a really great time with this one. Quinn Zinzili by Reggie Missak. Ooh, this one is difficult to talk about. I mean, it's a dystopian written during the time of the Second World War about an apocalyptic world, and it was interesting, but it was also kind of too real. Annihilation by Jeff Vandermeer. Now, somebody lied to her several times and told her that she was fly, sexy, and beautiful. And she's nothing like that. She's nothing of the sort. At least I didn't think so. The Little Prince. So cute. It was so good to reread this book, and it is as magical as I remembered. A Good Girl's Guide to Murder by Holly Jackson. Oh, if you like Pretty Little Liars, you have to read this one because she is that girl. The Familiar by Leigh Bardugo. I hate her with my whole heart. I hate her and I will never defend her. If The Familiar has 0 haters, I am dead. Lapvana by Tessa Moshfegh. I mean, the grape scene did change me, but I enjoyed this a lot more than a lot of other people did. Does that make me crazy? Maybe. Natural Beauty by Ling Ling Huang. This tried to do a little bit too much, but it was such an enjoyable ride, nevertheless. It's horror for the beauty girlies, and I'm here for it. Chlorine by Jade Tong also tried to say a lot and ended up saying absolutely nothing. I didn't care for this book. The Salt Goes Heavy by Kirsten DeCaw. A very weird and graphic and intense little horror novella. I didn't really understand what was going on, but I think I liked it. Our Wives Under the Sea by Julia Armfield. Another book that really is that girl, and I loved what it had to say about relationships, love, and grief. The Book of Goose by Yin Lee. One of my biggest disappointments of last year. This book was about stopper addiction and I ended up DNFing it. Another book that I was just thinking, why was this written? What is the point of this? Little Women by Louisa May Alcott. I mean, it's very Protestant, but it made me want to be a better person, so I give it kudos for that. An Unkindness of Ghosts by River Solomon. I don't usually enjoy a space opera, but I guess I enjoy them when River Solomon is the one writing it. On Earth We're Briefly Gorgeous by Ocean Vuong. I mean, this is such a book darling that I was expecting to love it a little bit more, but the writing really was good. It was just a lot about drugs, and I didn't know that. But I think it's worth your time. Assassin's Quest by Robin Hobb. I mean, what a finale, what a time to be alive. Please read this series. Filthy Animals by Brandon Taylor. I don't get it. The Adventures of Amina Al-Zarafi by Shannon Chakraborty. This had me in the first half, I'm not gonna lie, and then it lost me. How Beautiful We Were by Imbolo Umbwe. This book was the longest 300 something page book I've ever read. I enjoyed it, but at what cost? The Woman in Me by Britney Spears. I think Britney Spears is allowed to K-word at least 5 men that she chooses because this girl has just been through too much. Good Girl, Bad Blood by Holly Jackson. It was a middle book, but I still liked it. And then As Good as Dead by Holly Jackson. Nobody gets her, but I get her. I get her, and she really did something with this one. Killers of the Flower Moon by David Gran. Harrowing, depressing, but so good. Read it and then watch the movie and just weep. And that apparently is it. Those are all of the books that I read in 2024. Looking back, I did read a lot of sad books. Goddamn. But I also enjoyed most of the books that I did read, so I guess it was a good year overall. Let me know what you thought about any of these books, and if you did enjoy this video, please give it a thumbs up and subscribe to my channel for more bookish content, and I'll see you in my next video. I hope you have a nice day, and always remember that life is worth reading.